Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
So welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Filippo Lanubile from University of Bari in Italy. And he's actually one of the Software Engineering Innovation Foundation Award winners from last year. And his project is about SocialTFS, to make TFS more social. And today he will tell us about his progress.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tom has already introduced me, and I can start, thank you, from the second slide, because Tom was saying, here is written, I'm from University of Bari, so your question might be, where is Bari? no, many people in the US don't know it. So Bari is here. We are in South Italy, on the Adriatic Sea, on the hill of Italy. It's a nice place. I can tell you that you might have a chance to visit Bari if you attend the International Conference on Global Software Engineering on 2013 that will be organized in Bari. Okay, the presentation of today, I will start looking at the relationship between software engineering and collaborative supported cooperative work. Then I will talk about the impact of distance in collaboration. I will introduce and look into the concept of group awareness. And that is something that was proposed in CSCW and is of much interest for software engineers. I will provide a little survey of collaborative development environments and compare them with respect to how they support the group awareness, and especially the social awareness, that is the kind of awareness I'm going to talk about. And then I will propose, I will present what was our proposal, that augmenting social awareness in collaborative development environments, specifically the Team Foundation server. And then I will conclude, and there might be probably time even for a demo. Okay, I start saying it's looking at software development is an intense collaborative process. We actually had here during this week the workshop on the future of collaborative software development, and probably the first one was talking about software engineering as a collaborative, an intense collaborative process was Frederick Brooks in the mythical Man Month, almost 40 years ago. He was saying that software development is an exercise in complex interrelationships. We have different types of collaboration within a team. We have communication, which is the exchange of information between members of a team. Then we have coordination, which is the orchestration of tasks, so that there are no holes and no repetition, and all the tasks are go to achieve the same goal. And we have control, which is the process to adhere to policies, guidelines, and can be done formally with standards, formal meetings, or also informally as peer pressure. Computer-supported cooperative work, we have the conference here this week, that finished just yesterday, emerged from human-computer interaction to address the problems of collaboration in work groups, because there were the communication breakdowns, there were problems in coordination, there was the lack of knowledge about activity of colleagues. And this is something that actually it's the same problems that face the software developers in large-scale teams. And this is especially true for global distributed projects, where the distance makes collaboration more difficult. Having the same problems explain why there are many researchers that work at the intersection of CSCW and software engineering. From the CSCW point of view, software engineering becomes a domain, a specific domain of work. So we have in this conference there was one session about software engineering, at least for each time slot, and also we found in the software engineering conferences we found people that look at problems of that from a CSCW point of view. To explain, to introduce the problem of distance when people collaborate within a team, I usually use this Dilbert strip, where we have a program manager who is explaining to his software engineering that they are outsourcing their half of their programming work to Albania, an imaginary country in the world. So they can take advantage of time difference, even cuts in the cost. And the managers explain how it will be easy to do this. We will end off our requirements at the end of our workday and get back the finished code at the next morning. And then we have a couple of Albanians somewhere in the world. One is saying, reading the emails from the manager. Once again, have no idea what they want. And the other said, let's pretend we died. So because it's the worst thing that can happen when you collaborate on a global software project. There are different dimensions of distance. We can consider geographical distance. That is usually what we think about when we talk about distance, people that are dispersed in different sites. And actually it can be measured as the cost or effort to move across site to have physical meetings. Sometimes it can be very costly, and it can happen. We have temporal distance, that is a measure of temporal dispersion, that is the effect of working at different time zones. Actually, can also be the effect of living in different places with different work patterns. For example, in Italy, in the South Italy, we do lunch break at 1 or 2 p.m. In North Italy, people do make a lunch break at noon. And so the intersection to organize meetings becomes reduced even if you work on the same time zone. And then we have also the social-cultural distance, which is a measure of how difficult it is to understand the behavior of others and what they are saying. It also includes the linguistic differences that sometimes can be a big problem. I was making the classification because there was a paper appeared on communication of the ACM that was classifying the problems of working at a distance, considering the 3 dimensions of collaboration, communication, coordination, and control, and the 3 dimensions of distance, geographical, temporal, and socio-cultural. Actually, in the original paper, the table was more rich. It is a simplified version. And what I'm interested here to highlight that we are addressing here are the problems that in coordination when there is People work distance on a geographical basis, and the main problems are the lack of awareness and reduced trust. I will now talk about. Since I'm talking about awareness, let's see what is awareness. Generally, group awareness. This is a fundamental concept that was defined by Dorish and Bellotti 20 years ago. Actually, it was celebrated, this paper, as a seminal paper on this conference. And they defined group awareness as the understanding of the activities of others, which provide a context for your own activity. This is important because they make the individual contribution relevant to the group. And this relevant, the awareness information, whatever the task domain it is, and basically awareness works with two kind of actions, the monitoring and the displaying action. Everybody monitor what the others are doing, if it's relevant for what you are doing, and at the same time they let their action to be displayed so that the others can monitor you. And some year later, Carl Goodwin and others defined a classification of awareness in 4 dimensions. They said that the group awareness could be that is the information that provide awareness can be classified as informal awareness, that is the information about who is around, who is available. It's very common now with instant messaging because it's the basic feature that instant messaging introduced after the IRC chat. And then we have the group structural awareness, that is information about who does what in a group, which are the tasks, which are the roles. Then we have the workspace awareness, that is information about who is creating and changing the artifacts which are shared in the group. And at the end we have the social awareness, that what we are interested in this presentation. That is in social awareness is the information that we maintain we know about others while we are talking with them or in a social or conversational context. If I'm talking with something completely new to me, my social awareness is zero. I don't know nothing. If I'm talking with Tom, I know that Tom, what Tom is interested to, who are his friends, and this can be useful. At least can make the conversation better, and also in more general the collaboration. What I will now present is a short service of collaborative development environments and how they support group awareness, and we will see specifically social awareness. Here I included some of these collaborative development environments, including both the forks and tools that you can install. The name collaborative development environments actually comes from a paper from Greedy Butch and Brown in almost 10 years ago, that he was talking about that the IDE should be extended. He was asking to extend the IDE with collaborative features so that programmers should not switch back and forth between different applications to accomplish their work. And then the first collaborative development environments were proposed for open source software projects, but then there have been so many others. Sometimes they are called application lifecycle management platforms. The names can change. Basically, what they are, project workspace with a tool set that usually include a tracker, version control, some way to write documentation, dashboards, mechanism for event notification. And this can work also as an enrichment of the IDE. I can present just some of them. Track became popular some year ago, especially because it was the first one, from what I know, that introduced the wiki to create and maintain documentation, and this was something considered new at the time. And was also one of the first to introduce also the RSS feeds for event notification. And Google Code is popular, but it's nothing special. I mean, very basic as features. It's very simple to use, but nothing that probably is the simplicity that makes his success. And we have Codeplex from Microsoft. In Codeplex, I don't know if it's been the first one, but what I noted is something new as a web-based collaborative development environments was the ability to follow projects. That is a kind of awareness that you can have. So that you can have, it's a way it's an alternative way to RSS feeds for event notification, but you have the events of the projects that you are following in a common activity stream, which is part of your home home page in the Codeplex. We have also Assembla. Here are highlighted in bold some features that are borrowed from social software that have been introduced in this environment. For example, here you can, with Assembla, you can follow not just projects, but you can follow specific software artifacts. For example, I can follow a work item. So I can be more specific. And then I have an activity stream. Another thing new that other than RSS feeds for event notification, you can also have event notification on Twitter using a plugin. Here is the IBM Rational Team Concert, which is built upon a platform called JAS. Actually, JAS was initially proposed as to extend the Eclipse, so the IDE with presence awareness, asynchronous communication. Then it became much more, became an environment, a full environment. But at the beginning, this was JAS, specifically for presence awareness. And something also borrowed from social software that's been introduced in rational team concepts is the ability to tag work items, to add free keywords as a way of as a free classification, like you can do in Delicious, for example. And actually, there has been work in software engineering by Margaret Story and Chris Troyd, I'm not sure to pronounce well, maybe not, and where they have followed how developers in IBM were using tags, and they were using tags in work items not just as a classification way, but they were using as a form of indirect communication. to say what was important about a work item or not. You have your Team Foundation server. I will say it doesn't add anything to what we have seen before, at least from what I know. There is the SharePoint-based dashboards, but we have features that I've never used. I know that there is a plugin for presence awareness and synchronous communication. Then you can use MSN or Skype. I never tried it. And finally, we have GitHub that is, I will say, it was developed as the forge for projects using Git as a decentralized version control system. And but what is really new about GitHub is how many different ways you can use the follow features, and you can really develop a social network of programmers, because you can follow projects, but you can also follow the developers. Follow a developer, it was something new. It means that I can see what a developer working on different projects do, all their events in my timeline. And I can also see what are the connections of other developers, which developers are following other developers. And this is something that also has been studied for the first time. The first report about the usage of these features have been reported on this conference, just at this conference. There was a presentation both at the workshop on collaborative software development that was organized by Andrew Beagle, and there was also a paper on CSCW conference from Carnegie Mellon, Laura Dillon, Jim Hasbleb, and somebody else, that were they performed an empirical investigation of how developers use these follow features within GitHub. It's they performed 25 interviews, and they provide at the end lessons learned and guidelines that could be useful for other environments that want to borrow this kind of features. That, from what I know, was the first study about these features, specific on GitHub. Summarizing, I'm including the collaborative development environments that I presented, and looking at how the different kind of awareness are supported. And we can see that group structural awareness and workspace awareness are supported in different degrees, but they are usually, you understand that these environments have been developed for this, for the group structure and the workspace awareness. As regards informal awareness or presence awareness, we have Rational Team Concert and Team Foundation server that support it. But as regards the social awareness, we have just the GitHub that partially support social awareness. I remind you again that social awareness is the information we know about other people, what they do, who they know. And this I say partially because it's partially done using the feature follow developers' activities in GitHub. So the question now that might be something that is missing, or actually also might be maybe social awareness is not worth to be supported. And so what I'm trying to do now is introduce some empirical studies on these past years that support our hypothesis that social awareness can benefit the developers' work. So the first empirical study was presented at CHI on last year by Costa, Marcelo Cataldo, Cledson de Souza. This was an empirical study conducted over 3 different companies, big companies, and 5 large projects. And studying their repositories, doing interviews, and what they conclude that 25% of coordination of new coordination requirements, so people which are asked to coordinate with somebody else because they are working at common work items, involve project members that don't often work together, that don't know each other, or they have worked with more than 6 months ago. So they conclude in this paper that supporting the sharing of personal and contextual information will increase the likelihood of successful information, because working with unknown people, it's common. Another empirical study here is a controlled experiment to support the idea that social awareness is needed. It's an experimental study performed 10 years ago, where in a laboratory setting, and people were asked to collaborate at a distance, and here performing some tasks. The tasks were not specific of software development, and what was observed that people being at a distance was affecting negatively the willingness to initially cooperate. It was a kind of play to do. Was negatively affecting the ability to persuade the other partner. And there was also a tendency for deception of that partner, people pretending to be better of what they actually are. But this effect was decreasing because as interactions were repeating, while people were interacting, this negative effect could continue to stay or could decrease, depending on whether the people were said they were living closer or not. Actually, this was an artificial setting, so people were in the same place, but they were said, some was a group which was said they were living in two different cities, very far. Another group was said that they were living in the same city. People living in the same city, but they were not working in the same place, had a feeling of being close, and this had a trust-building effect. Just feeling to be close, not really be closed. The third empirical study that I'm going here presenting is it was performed in a global company. Probably IBM is not said, but probably it was IBM, because there was an expertise search tool was introduced in this global company, and this expertise search tool produced a list of experts that could be contacted, and from this list of expert, people had to choose which one to contact. And when studying the reasons because developers were choosing somebody in this expert list, they were choosing on the basis of two reasons. One was the participation of the expert to be contacted in forums or blogs, because they had the feeling that they were more likely to respond, how much they were actively participating in social software. And also another reason, this is easier to guess, is how they were close socially, because they directly know them or indirectly knowing. And this is because can avoid the cold calls that are filled. You can feel embarrassed to contact somebody that you have never met, or you don't know somebody that you can say, you know, I know Tom. Tom told me that I could ask you something. Finally, this last study that support the thesis that social awareness can be needed. This study is about how professional software engineering were using an internal social network that was introduced in IBM. And when interviewed, people were saying that they were using the internal social networks to build stronger bonds with their weak ties, or to reach colleagues that they didn't know. And so the connection were being created to support the 25% of coordination requirements that I presented before. And also there were different motivations to establish new connection, this social network, not just gathering support for project activities, but also the desire to connect professionally, or even to connect personally by sharing pictures or personal events. So, these are studies that I've reported that provide motivation to say that augmenting a collaborative development environment with social awareness information can be worth. And specifically, our goal is to facilitate the establishment of personal connections by discovering personal interests of developers or their competencies, collecting from social media this information. Here, I show the hypothesis in a visual way. Our hypothesis is that collecting information from social networks can work as a surrogate of the informal communication that you exchange in a cafeteria or in a pub, in a restaurant, in the same way as a remote conferencing is used to replace the physical meeting room for formal meetings. So I will say that this is the lack of informal communication, and where the informal communication also provides information that tends to build trust, is what we want to fix. So this is SocialTFS. SocialTFS is the tool that we have developed using the award from the Software Engineering and Innovation Award, and it is an aggregator of developers' content collected from social media and put in the developer's workspace. Specifically, the developer's workspace is a Team Foundation server and the ID in the Visual Studio. We have developed it as an extension of Visual Studio for the GUI, and we have built a social proxy, which is the aggregator. We collect all the services from the social networks, microblogs, and also collects information from the server side of Visual Studio, the Team Foundation server. I present now some screenshot to show how it appears. For example, this is Visual Studio, and SocialTFS appears as a view within Social Studio. Here, the story that is the user story is, as a developer, I want to share my post with other developers. What I do as a developer is choosing which services I want to open. For example, this is my profile. I have open information about Codeplex, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And there are other that are I've not open, like Yammer or StatusNet. These are professional microblogs. And you can see here, okay, there is a number of posts that I've provided, number of people that I'm following, and a number of people that are I'm following and I'm followed by. And actually, this information is managed on the server side by the social proxy, which has two purposes. One is to store the user's credentials on behalf of the user, but without knowing the passwords, because fortunately now there are authorization protocols like OAuth that we use. And also, other than storing users' credentials, also posts are cached. This is useful to avoid, to provide good performance, so that I think it worked well. Here we can see now the current users not are active. Number of posts, they are summarized because this is the server side. This is the admin panel. Is this? It's not for the developers. As regards privacy concerns, user has full control on not only on which services he wants to open, but also on which information want to show. For example, here, if I click on one of the service, in this case it was Facebook, I can choose which information I want to provide. For example, if I want to open Facebook, but just to provide information about my friends, but not to provide the information about my post, because I can think they are too personal, I can do that. So this is what appears when I'm in the Visual Studio interface, and these are the posts. The posts here appear in the view, and you can see these are the people I'm following. They are part of the team, and this is an aggregator, so I can see from where the posts are coming from. So now the question is who to follow. What are the people I'm following? And we have two options. One is a classic option. I follow people that I decide to follow. It's up to me. Make the decision, like it's usually done on a social network. And this, so this is the home timeline that we provide, because we have different timelines in SocialTFS. Home timeline is the people that I have decided to follow. Can be suggested, but basically it's something that I say, yes, I want to follow this, it's static. The second option is dynamic kind of follow. And it takes the inspiration by a paper which have appeared just last year, and by Clegson de Souza and David Redmiles. It's named the Awareness Network. To whom should I display my action, and whose action should I monitor? That address the problem of the awareness network. That is the people I should follow. I should be concerned of. And sorry, I have to stop. 1 second. I've lost. I was looking for. Sorry.
No worries, it happens. Yeah, just saying.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. So they were arguing in this paper that the awareness network is not something in the software project, is not something that is the same from the beginning to the end, but it changes continuously. Because they say it depends on what are your assignments, and so which work item, if we talk about work item, which work items have been assigned to you. And you might be concerned about people who have something in common with the work items you have been assigned, or that you have commented in some way. And here, what we call the iteration timeline, I will come back. That is something very dynamic, because changes for every iteration. And another way to change the awareness network is to have something, an awareness network that changes depending on what you are watching on Visual Studio. If you are watching a source code file or a work item, and the awareness network might change because your interest is changing. I will present you this timeline. The first one is the static kind of timeline, what we call home timeline, where the following depends on whom I decide to follow. Here are the people in my awareness network, and they actually are the people that have been registered and I can distinguish between the people I'm following, the people that I follow, the people that are following me, and the people that are suggested. We see there is a little recommender system that provides suggestion. I'm currently following just Fabio Calefato here. And so in the home timeline, I will read just his posts. I was saying that we have a recommender system for this, very simple actually, because suggestions are from people who are taken from people if you are in the same projects, or you are in the same TFS collection, or the people that are following you in one of the social networks that have been subscribed, or if you are a follower of those persons. So the suggestions are modeled and are ranked based on the number of links to those people. For example, here we have here 4 nodes, which are the users, and this is me. And I'm on the same project with Fabio. And with Nicola. And I'm following. I'm following Fabio and Giuseppe on Twitter, and Fabio and Giuseppe. I'm following me on Twitter, and I'm following Fabio on Twitter. And this is a weighted multigraph. You compute the number of weights of the links that go to the same node, and then you get the ranked suggestion list. The weights can be changed by the administrator on the server side, so that can be, because here we have considered that being on the same project in the Codeplex or TFS can be more important than being a follower in some social network, but this can change. And this is the iteration timeline that we're following. I was saying depends on work items in which a developer is involved in the current iteration. That means that we took the active and fixed work items and look for each work item which people have been involved, has been assigned or have commented or in those work items. And this is the other way of having a dynamic awareness network, which is the interactive timeline. That is, depending on which tab is opened in the main editor space, I will have a different people as in the timeline, depending on who have changed the source code file, or who has changed or commented a work item. And if I switch between the different tabs, this changes. And this is quick because the posts are cached, so I don't need to go far. Okay, this for presenting the features. All the project is is part of the Codeplex, so it's open source. You can see both the code and also the work items, because we use use the assignments of work items to do this. We have some documentation, at least important how to install, because there is the installation, there is the client, which is the extension of Visual Studio, and there is the server side to install the proxy. And you will find it. We have also used the code contracts, something that I did. Yes, we have. I discovered in Paris that were presented, so we use them. And these are the people. This is a small team. It's me and postdoc Fabio Calefato and two master of science students, Giuseppe Santoro and Nicola Sanitata. Was the picture as an avatar in the tool, but not in Codeplex. And these are the conclusions. Just as summarize, the research question is how do we strengthen or build trust among developers who are part of global software teams who have few or no chances at all to meet. And the hypothesis is that the information shared on social networks, if collected, can work as a surrogate of the social awareness which we gain during the informal meetings in in the real life. And SocialTFS does this work and aggregates the social information into Team Foundation servers. It is ready for demo and use. And as a future work, we think that we will evolve SocialTFS two directions. One is to integrate the social information with other types of information, which are related, for example, to workspace awareness, because that is something we have not mixed yet, and but you cannot just mix. You have to think about how to. One kind of information can be used together with others, and also another thing that we can do is a mobile version of SocialTFS, because, for example, except for the interactive timeline, the home timeline and the iteration timeline might be used on a Windows phone, so you can maybe while sitting at your desk, you are not looking at social information about your colleagues, but while you are in the metro, you might do that. So can be different context. And also, but most important that we have an hypothesis, but we have to test the hypothesis, so that we want to measure the actual benefit of being personally connected to other developers in the workplace. And for doing this, unfortunately, it's not something that we can do with university students. I mean, we need a large project with real developers, and that use Microsoft tools that work with Microsoft development environment. So I will. This is one of the expectations I have from this talk, to raise some interest about this, because this is the first place that I can think about, of course, or at least you can guide me about this. I think this was the last slide. Here I have the tool. I mean, we have time is finished. Okay, time is I have the tools, because since I have yes, we have some meeting with some of you. I mean, I can continue show some. Okay, I will show you. Okay, these were the people. For example, if I want to accept a suggestion, I can see, for example, before accepting a suggestion, what is doing. I can also view it, for example, with the skills about people. They are taken from LinkedIn, just because LinkedIn provides skill. And if I decide to follow him, okay, now. Then I had the iteration timeline. That, as I was saying, changes according to the active fixed. And here you see, this is the interaction. That was the iteration timeline. This interaction timeline, if I open a file, it will be filled. You see. And if I open see, because basically information is taken from here. And if I come back to the source code file, this switch. So also, and if I open another, I mean, of course, I mean, here are the services that I have opened. Here about Codeplex, it's if I want to suggest the people that I won't be part of the suggestion of being in the same projects. And the feature, the properties changes according. Okay, and okay, I can also hide people if I don't want to see. There is not too much else to show, because that have to be simple and not be complicated. The problem is now to understand if. Of course, while working, I mean, if I find this annoying, I can also close it. I can reopen. Of course, I can reduce it. Yeah. These are part of the features of the IDE. It's a being a view. I can arrange it as I prefer. Okay, this. Nothing else to add about the demo, because if you have questions.
So, sorry, do you want to? So yeah, it's really pretty cool and impressive. So one question I have is that, I mean, you're putting this in a development environment where presumably the person, when they're seeing that, is doing some type of development task, whether debugging or writing code or whatever. But as demonstrated over there, many of the comments are actually not related to development at all, at least in your particular context. Do you envision that, like, the purpose of this is to become aware, just to get to know who you're working with? Like, so I've never met this guy, but it looks like he likes going to concerts for indie music and has a girlfriend who's pregnant? Or is it more like, oh, you expect people that will be writing like, oh, I fixed this major bug in this thing today, wow, that was really tough, so you have an idea of what they're actually doing on the development side of things?
Yeah, interesting questions. Currently, this is about social awareness. There are no interaction with other kind of awareness. For example, workspace awareness or the group structural awareness. We can think about this. Make the different kind of awareness be dependent. And for example, I was talking about the developers, but actually in the Visual Studio are not just the developers as a program. They are the tester. There is a project. Currently, I mean, so the perspective can be broadened, and currently we are able to include all of them, of course, but the roles are not seen, but might be.
I mean, I can see the benefits of viewing it from either perspective, because just knowing what people are up to in their lives, what their various development can create like a closer relationship, like this is a real person and trust and things. It would be interesting to know if people's reaction to what they post differs when they know that people are following them within an IDE as well. Like, would you post other information? So like when I post on Facebook, right, I know who's looking at me and what context, so that kind of dictates what I write to some degree.
This also why we, having done this, there are so many things that we might add. But I think that we are at a time that we also need the feedback on actual usage before deciding which kind of direction or what is worth to add. And it's, for example, now you are saying it's a speculation of what you might be useful to add. What we would like is to get this feedback from users that have tried this and saying, look, I have used this, but I will need to do something more or to know also this.
Yeah, so I wasn't actually necessarily saying you should add something to it, but just like I think just watch how people use it and
yeah. This is what
and what they're able to learn from it.
Yeah, because I can imagine as an empirical study is giving to people who want to use it and then have questionnaires and interviews, structured interviews to gather information about some specific questions that you are looking for, about to discover patterns. Thank you.